Hi, I'm Monica Shah, and this is the More Money series. Now, in this particular video, I'm talking about something that is so important, and that is what to do when a client originally says yes and is excited to work with you, and then they back out. They come back and they say no. What to do to win them back and to inspire them to come back, because this is one of the most heartbreaking moments we have as entrepreneurs. And here's the thing, most people don't know how to handle this. And so what I have found is that if you don't know the things that I'm going to share with you in this video, you end up losing the client, which is awful for them and awful for you. So I'm going to show you the 4 don'ts of what not to do and what to do to make sure you win that client back. Now let's get into it. So the first of the 4 don'ts, right, is don't panic. But before we even get into the not panicking, let me just make sure I get into how this actually shows up for you. So let's say that you have signed a client and you're so excited. You just got off the phone with them. You've had the sales conversation. They were a yes. They gave you the credit card number. You're really like, woohoo. You do the happy dance. You maybe call somebody that, like your mom or your husband or your wife, and you tell them that you just got this new client. And then you get the dreaded email or the dreaded text message or the dreaded phone call. Maybe it's 3 hours later, maybe it's a day later, and that person says, I've changed my mind. I'm actually not going to do your program. I talked to my partner. We decided that we couldn't spend the money, or I just can't prioritize it right now, or after thinking about it, I don't want to do it, and they back out. Now, in this moment, the first thing that most of us do is we start to panic on some level. And that's the first don't. Don't panic. The reason why I don't want you to panic is because this is a rite of passage for almost every service practitioner. This happens all the time. You didn't do anything wrong. They're not backing out because there's something wrong with you or something wrong with your services. They had what I call a Haagen-Dazs moment. And let me explain what that means. When I first started my first coaching business years ago, I had a client who came into me. She was so excited to work with me, and she paid in full. And then she went home, and literally, I didn't know this at the time, she ate 2 pints of Haagen-Dazs ice cream, then called me back and said, I can't do it anymore. And the reason I call it a Haagen-Dazs moment is because that's what happens. People go home and they panic and they start freaking out, and they start just mistrusting themselves. They stop listening to their guidance. They start going into fear, especially if they've given you their credit card, and they have these sort of Haagen-Dazs moments. And what you need to do as a practitioner is not resist that, but actually lean into it. So don't panic. Know that this is normal. Now, I say normal with a grain of salt. If this is happening with every single one of your clients, then we may want to look at your sales conversation. But if it's happening every now and then, well, then welcome to the club. The second don't assume that the client is going to want to talk to you. So the first step that a lot of you do when somebody backs out is you immediately send an email back saying, let's set up a time to talk. Or you text message, let's set up an appointment. And you kind of wait around for the client to respond back to set up a time to talk or set up an appointment or to give you a call back. And 99% of the time, that is never going to happen. They're not going to respond to your email. They're not going to want to set up an appointment. They're not going to call you back. Every now and then a client will do that just out of integrity, but it is rare. And the reason that they are not excited to get back on the phone with you is because they know if they get back on the phone with you, you're going to convince them to join again. And if you convince them to join again, it's going to bring back all the fears and the resistance. And they don't want that. They just want to stay, because there's something that happens when somebody backs out of working with you. They get this release of fear. They don't have to step into anything new. They don't have to step out of their comfort zone. So as soon as they pop off that email to you that says, I don't want to do the program anymore, it's a huge release for them. Now, it's not a healthy release, and they're not going to be able to do the goals that the two of you committed to doing, but it is a release. And they don't want to get back on the phone with you or have another conversation because they don't want to let go of that release. So here's what you have to do. You have to call them out of the blue, without an appointment, and you have to keep calling them. You don't have to leave messages every time. You may want to try a couple different times during the day so that you can have a conversation with them and re-inspire them to come back and work with you. And that leads to the third don't. Don't make the assumption that they don't want to hear from you. Don't make the assumption that they are ultimately a no. Often what this really requires is what I call a resell conversation. Resell. And what that means is that you are going to get back on the phone with them, you're going to call them out of the blue, and you're going to re-inspire them and remind them why they signed up to work with you in the first place and what the benefits are to working with you. You can look back at your notes if you'd like, and you want to walk them through all these new fears and the new resistances that have come up in the process. And that may take a little while. I mean, I've been on resale conversations sometimes for an hour. Sometimes I've had to have 2 to 3 of them just to bring someone in with all their fears. Now, keep in mind, again, I want you to use your intuition on this one. Because sometimes, like I was just talking to a client of mine in the Rise Business Academy, sometimes you don't want to bring them back in. Sometimes you get the sixth sense that, you know what, if I have to drag this client back in, I'm gonna have to drag them around. And that's perfectly fine if your intuition is saying, you know, let them be. But I would say for me, literally 90% of the time, when a client has backed out of fear, and I call them out of the blue, re-inspire them, reconnect with them, and inspire them to come back into the program, they're super excited. Like a year later, they're signing up for a second program and a third program with us, and it has been an amazing experience. In fact, I have a couple clients who I resold in who freely admit that they were waiting for me to call them. They were waiting for me to re-inspire them, and they needed that. They needed just a little extra hand-holding to be able to get into the program and stay in the program. And so a lot of people ask, well, how do you do that resell conversation? It's very similar to your original sales conversation. So however you do your original sales conversation, you want to start with the inspiration again, really inspiring them about what they want to create and what they could create, and then move through the whole process, and then really spend some time on their fears and the resistance and what's coming up for them. And don't be afraid of them getting emotional. This is a moment that could be a breakthrough for this new client. Often there's tears on this call. Often there might even be some anger at particular moments where they're releasing stuff that is getting in their way of fully stepping in. I know for me, I'm always really appreciative of these resale conversations because it allows the client to move through a lot of just like fears and resistance before they get into the program, which means they're going to be more successful in the program. And the final don't here is don't forget to prepare your clients. And what that means is knowing that this is going to happen is a huge asset to you. So what that means is knowing that there's some percentage of the time clients are going to go back home and they're going to have second thoughts about the program or about the product or the service that they bought. So one of the ways to make sure that they know that this is okay and that they don't fall into fear around it is to prepare your clients for it. So at the end of a sales conversation, after you've taken their credit card and you've signed them up for the program, one of the great things to do is to just say, listen, you may go home tonight and literally sit down and then have all these feelings of fear and resistance, and you may want to back out. And I want you to know that that's completely normal. Everybody feels that way. If that happens for you, here's my cell phone number, right? Text me. Let's talk through it. I'm here for you. We are in partnership around this. And if you're doing it to a group of people, like let's say you've signed a group of people up, you can even say it to your group. Hey guys, I know that when you get home and maybe you tell your friends and family about this, there is going to be a time at which you might second guess your decision. And often when you get home, the universe also causes you to second guess your decision. This is one of those times where you'll go home and the car will break down and the washing machine will break down, and suddenly you're wondering why you spent this money on this. And I want you to know if that happens, that's completely normal. And it's not a sign that you shouldn't do it. It's a sign that you should, right? It's a sign that, the washing machine was going to break down anyway, right? The car was going to break down anyway. It's not a sign that you did the wrong thing. But what I can tell you is by sticking to your decision to stay in the program, you're going to be better equipped to deal with any issue that comes up, like the car breaking down or the washing machine breaking down. When you prepare them for the fact that this is coming, and you give them a route in which, to email you or call you should this come up, it makes for less people just suddenly going MIA, missing in action, after they decided to not work with you. Now, again, just remembering the 4 don'ts. Don't panic, because this is quite normal, right? Don't expect the client to call you. You're going to need to call them. And don't assume that the client is a no. You can resell them and move them to a yes. And the final don't is don't forget to prepare your clients for the fact that this might happen. Now, I know that this is somewhat of a interesting conversation, because many of you might be thinking, why are we even doing a video on this? I would never want this to happen. And I don't want it to happen either, right? I don't want it for you, but it does happen. In real life, clients change their mind. And if you don't actually connect with them and resell them in and re-inspire them, you're leaving money on the table. And not only are you leaving money on the table, you're leaving clients behind. People that actually could use your services and have major changes in their life because of you. So don't forget the 4 don'ts. If you have the experience where somebody says yes and then they want to back out, this is a surefire way to be able to win them back, inspire them, and not only that, have them really appreciate it and appreciate you. So with that, my wish for you, as always, is to make a ton of money and make this world a better place. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up below. And while you're down there, go ahead and subscribe so that you can get my future videos as well. And when you subscribe, please remember to turn on the turn notifications on button so that you're notified the next time a video comes out. And please feel free to leave me a comment or a question. I'll be on here to answer them. And I love connecting with you. And don't forget to look at the video description, because there'll be a link there for a resource that will take this conversation even further. And before you go, check out some of my other videos that relate to this content down below.